Hey everybody, I'm here with Sean Hawthorne. I'm Dana Dykema here in Vancouver, BC, and he's over there in Manitoba. We have a connection through his sister. His sister Shauna was coming to my church for the first time, and we ended up having lunch together afterwards. Got to talking about, where are you from? What do you do? What are you into? What's your family like? And she's like, oh, well, I have a brother named Sean, and he's a outfitter, used to be a pastor. And so we had lots in common, and one thing led to another, and here we are today having a conversation. Another side note, though, his mom and dad came over from Manitoba a couple weeks ago and brought me some elk tenderloin, which was such a treat. I'd never had elk before, so Shauna was like, we have got to rectify the situation. And his parents were so kind to bring me some elk tenderloin. It was like best day ever. So welcome, Sean, to the show.
Thank you, Dana. It's a delight to be here. I think it's pretty amazing how we've got connected,
Mm-hmm.
just through chance circumstances like that. It's pretty neat how things like that happen. So
Yeah, this is our second attempt at recording this one, so it's all good. It's par for the course for today.
yeah, that's
Anyway, Sean, why don't you bring us back to, where did you grow up? I know it's you. I think it's just hilarious, Sean and Shauna,
right. Yeah,
you and your
yeah.
sister.
And
When she said it,
actually, I need to
like,
correct you, and I'm sorry I have to do that. But our last name is Paul. My last name is
oh, Paul.
yeah, and
Okay, my
Hawthorne
apologies.
comes in. That's the name of our Black Bear outfitting business, Hawthorne Outfitting. So,
Gotcha.
but
All
yes,
right.
Sean
Should
and
have.
Shauna, we've definitely been asked what was the matter with our parents when they came up with that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And so, what is it?
well, I think my dad said it was just something that would be a whole lot easier to remember our names if it was just Sean and Shauna.
That is hilarious. And he's a very sweet man. We had lunch with my husband and I had lunch with him and your mom and Shauna and your brother-in-law the other week.
Yeah,
So that was a real treat to hang out with them. Very sweet family that you have. So
well, thank you.
yeah, now so you didn't grow up in Manitoba, or did you? So bring us back to the beginning, where you were born, how things got started for you.
Yeah, yeah, we kind of born and raised in Manitoba for sure. I
Hmm.
was born in Roblin, Manitoba, which is pretty close to the Saskatchewan border, pretty close to Yorkton, Saskatchewan. And Roblin is right on the edge of Duck Mountain Provincial Park. And
Okay.
I was born here, but my parents moved away shortly after I was born, and I actually did all of my elementary school and high school growing up in Rivers, Manitoba, which was about 2.5 hours south, 2 hours south of Roblin, and it's near Brandon. So Rivers was a rural community, farming community. So yeah, definitely grew up in the country per se. My dad, my dad wasn't a farmer by any stretch of the imagination, but just growing up in a rural community, Manitoba, and then of course with me being born in Roblin, we had both my parents had big families. My dad comes from a family of 8. My mother comes from a family of 11, and she was
Wow.
the oldest. So, over the years, um, we would often come home, and I would spend some of my summers north of Roblin, where my grandparents lived, just right on the edge of the Duck Mountains. So definitely, kind of, growing up was a lot of traveling back and forth, but being in the Duck Mountain area where my grandparents were and a lot of different aunts and uncles, it was a little different than where I grew up in Rivers, just because it was so much because of the Duck Mountain. It was just so much more what we call bush and so
Mhm.
much more wildlife. Like there were elk and moose and deer and bears and wolves, and it was just a whole different way of life. And there was something intriguing about that, something special about it. My mom's dad was a real musician, and he played the fiddle, and we would always come, and on the weekends, and they'd be having like barn dances, and I'm hearing all this fiddle music and country music. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool experience.
I love that. I love the fiddle. Yeah, that's.
That's fun.
I don't know how to play any instruments, but yeah, the fiddle is such an incredible instrument. It just makes you happy like instantly.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely. So,
how far apart in age are you and Shauna?
my
Are
sister
you
Shauna's 4 years younger than me.
younger? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so your parents, you said, did you grow up in hunting? Like, did your family hunt? Your parents or
You know
aunts
what?
and uncles?
Yeah, definitely. My aunt, or a lot of my uncles on my, couple of my uncles on my mother's side were pretty avid hunters and still are. Um,
Hmm.
but like growing up, I, I didn't really do any hunting. It's kind of wild, especially, I mean, I'm 53 years old now. And when I look back, it was like, oh my goodness, I lost like about 10 solid years of hunting that I could have had some cool experiences, and maybe I would have got my big monster trophy buck that's still eluding me, but
Okay.
no, I um my dad, when he grew up, they hunted a bit, but it was basically just to put meat on the table, and my dad didn't wasn't passionate about hunting, for sure, but I do have some vivid memories, because he did do a little bit of hunting growing up, this and that. I remember a couple of occasions specifically where my dad took me rabbit hunting, and I don't even know how old I was. I bet you I was probably like maybe 8 or 9 or 10 years old, just kind of following your dad in the bush. And he's got his 22, and we're going rabbit hunting. And I remember he shot a couple of rabbits, and somehow he put them on some sticks. And I was like following behind him, trying to keep up. And I'm carrying these two rabbits. And it's like one of the best memories that I had
Hmm.
with my dad growing up, because we only did it like once or twice. And
Okay.
it was just like tramping around the woods and looking for rabbits. It was so cool. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so uh, I didn't grow up hunting, but you had mentioned that for a lot of years of my life, I have been a pastor. I've served as a pastor in a couple of churches, for approximately 25 years. That's kind of been, you know, my calling in life, per se, even more than hunting. It's
Hmm.
been working for God in the church, and it's interesting because that's how I got into hunting. Um,
Oh, neat.
we had a church service one Sunday night, and this was in the early '90s, and I had just started pastoring. I was in my early 20s, and after service, we were sitting around, a few of us, and we were having coffee. And this one family said, "Oh, we're going to go deer hunting next week." And they started talking about deer hunting, and for some way or another, they said, "Hey, do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll give it a go." And my dad didn't have a lot of guns. He had like a 22 and a 30-30. And
Hmm.
I was green as green could be. I didn't really know anything, and I was like, do I need a 22 to go shoot deer, or do I need a 30-30? So they said, well, you better bring the 30-30. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I had done a little bit of shooting over the years, but definitely not hunting. And so I was accustomed to shooting a gun, and I had my hunter's safety and all of that kind of stuff. So I was kind of good to go. And anyway, we went deer hunting, that next week, essentially. And I, I I remember, um, we were kind of driving a valley. Like, we kind of had some guys sitting on a post, and a couple of us were dropped off a mile away, and we were just told, just walk west until you hit the road, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And another guy was on the other side of the valley, and he was walking west. And so, anyways, I was one of the guys that got to walk west, and away I went. And as I'm walking west, I'm walking kind of slow. I'm not really making a whole lot of noise. I don't know what to do. I'm just walking west through the woods. And as I'm walking, I look ahead, and I saw a deer, and it didn't see me. And so then, I mean, the hunt was on, and it was
Yeah.
it was pretty cool because I just got behind this tree, and he was basically just kind of browsing and slowly making his way towards me. And I thought, well, I'm deer hunting. I guess this is my opportunity. And I just kind of nestled up, used the tree as a lean, and it was about 100-yard shot, and I shot the deer in the neck, and it dropped like a like
Wow.
a bag of flour, and I walked. I thought it was a doe, and lo and behold, it was my first buck. He had like about 2-inch spikes,
Okay.
so I was. It was wild because you know what? I ended up walking west and walk out to the road, and my deer was dead, and of course I didn't know what to do.
Right.
Go get help, and
Yeah.
uh, um, got the help, and we ended up locating the deer, finding the deer. But there was just something that was my first animal that I've ever harvested in my life. And I tell you, it just opened a whole new world to me that I had no idea was there. Um,
Mhm.
and just having a few vivid memories with my dad hunting, and then wow, I shot my first deer, and then it was like wow, this was
Mhm.
a whole new world of discovery for me. And fortunately for me at that time, where I was pastoring this church was in the community where I now live. It's called St. Clara, Manitoba. It's north of Roblin, about 25 minutes, and we're right on the edge of Duck Mountain Provincial Park. And
Okay.
I was living there, had just moved there, and I didn't know it, but I think this is the way God works. I He just put me at the right place at the right time in my life, and I was immersed like right in um, hunter heaven, if you will. Like
Yeah.
it's just an incredible place where that we live, that we have here as far as the wildlife and just the opportunity. So as a young man in my early 20s, I was single, and man, hunting was like, wow, this is incredible. And I just kind of hook, line, and sinker, I was thrust
Yeah.
into it. So,
Awesome. That's a great story. I love that. And yeah, it just really something just awakens in you when you go out there and you harvest your first animal, and it's just so it's I hate to use the word empowering because I feel like that's such an overused word, but it is. You're like, wow, I just, it's all of these emotions all at once. You've just killed something. You've just ended a life. You've, you did a hard thing that you have never done before. You got to figure out what to do now.
yeah,
And then at the end of it all, you get to enjoy food that you got yourself, and you can replay those moments over and over again and just know that you did all of the things to make that dish happen that is finally now in front of you. And just what such a satisfying feeling too, and getting to share it and tell the story again, and just all of the things. Like I'm very new to hunting as well. Just got my licenses last February, and then just harvested my first mule deer in November. So now I feel like, okay, now I can at least I know what I'm talking about somewhat.
right,
Um,
right.
when it comes to talking about harvesting an animal, like I've killed chickens, and then recently meat rabbits, but to get a big game animal like that is pretty special. And just to be able to pull it out of the freezer and feed my family is very, very satisfying. Makes me very happy. So, and
Absolutely.
like you say, you just want to do it again. You want to get out there and see what else you can find out there, because you just every time you go out into the woods, it's always different. And
Yeah,
just being out in God's creation is so relaxing and peaceful and exciting.
yeah. There's something about filling the freezer with meat that you hunted, that you harvested, that's healthy and so good for you. And yeah, you just can't wait to eat it and empty the freezer, and can't wait for fall to come around again and do it all over again. Because, like you
That's
said,
right.
some of the most rewarding experiences in life are getting outdoors and in the fresh air and hunting these animals that God has given us. I mean,
Mhm.
it, I've had so many experiences that have been so rewarding. It's incredible. It's a great life.
Mhm. Yeah, so you pastored these churches for how many years? You recently retired. that correct?
Well, I don't know if I've retired, but I've recently resigned. The last 15 years or so, my wife and I, our family, have been living. We moved to St. Catharines, Ontario. So we've been living in Niagara for the last 15 years. And it's kind of interesting. I was actually just thinking about this morning. We've moved back to the San Clara area, north of Roblin on the edge of the Duck Mountain. We just moved back last September. And
Hmm.
we bought a ranch, 320 acres, a nice log home in a beautiful valley. When we were living here before, it was basically my wife and I's dream home. We thought if there's any one place that we could ever own in at home, it's the place that we now own that we just bought in September.
Ah.
And this morning I was out for a walk with one of my horses. Since we moved back in September, one of the loves of my life have been horses. Back in the early 90s, when I first started pastoring, when I had finished Bible college, I just had a desire to train a horse. And again, I didn't grow up around horses. We didn't have
Hmm.
horses, but again, coming back to the Duck Mountain as a kid, my uncles had horses, and I rode a bit. And there was just a desire I wanted to have a horse. So in the early 90s, I got a horse and I trained a horse. Her name was Cheyenne. I got her when she was just weaned. In September of that year, off of her, I trained her. I learned a whole lot, and I still got a whole lot more to learn about horses. But one of the joys of my family, my wife and I, has been since we've moved back to the Duck Mountain in September, is we just each bought ourselves uh, two yearling horses. They'll be 1 year old coming this spring, and I've
Hmm.
been working with them the last few months, just doing some groundwork. And I was just walking down our gravel road this morning, and I had one of these young horses that I was leading, took him out of the corrals, and it just again been working with him. And as I was leading this horse, I was looking around. We still got a ton of snow here, Dana. Like
Okay.
like today's a beautiful day. I think it's like +8, and it's like the warmest it's been since October. And
Yeah.
like we still got snow up to our waist here. So, but finally it's gonna start melting. And I'm
Hmm.
leading this horse down the gravel road, and I'm looking around at the snow and the spruce trees and the poplar trees and our ranch, and I'm like, wow! If somebody would have told me a year ago that I would
Yeah.
be walking down this road with leading my horse again, like I've been away from horses for like 20 years. And if somebody would have told me this a year ago, I would have fell off my tree. And yet here we are, and God has really really blessed us, and
Yeah.
it's just been so cool. Um,
That's amazing.
yeah.
That's yeah, horses definitely have a special place in my heart. I never had one, but grew up playing horses with my friends and pretending as best we could. But yeah, there's just something about them. They just seem like such amazing companions, and
You know
they
what?
each have their own personality.
You know what's cool about horses in my life has been that's actually what got me into guiding and outfitting. So in
Okay.
the early 90s, there when I had moved back to the Duck Mountain, pastoring the church, I brought my horse with me, and my horse now at that time was 2, 3, 4 years old. I got in the saddle when she was 2 and put some light miles on her, and then just started using her a whole lot. And I mean, I had some of the greatest experiences in my life, um, sitting on the back of my horse Cheyenne, riding all over the Duck Mountain. I would go with my uncles, and actually I became very passionate about shed hunting. And
Oh yeah,
in the
awesome.
springtime, we used to do it on horseback. And I'd go with my uncles and a few friends, whoever, and we would just go, like ride all day long, take some sandwiches. We'd even do overnighters. Sometimes we'd take a blanket with us and just camp out overnight and just look for elk antlers and moose antlers and deer antlers. And we did it all on horseback. So, it was just a whole new element. It was just so much fun. It kind of felt like the old West, without
Right.
the six guns and things like that. But it was so cool. But I got into guiding. I started hunting like big time after that first experience. And then we have a local taxidermist here, a taxidermy in Santa Clara Boggy Creek. And I was at Boggy Creek Taxidermist one day, and I remember I was kind of I used to go there all the time just because it was a part of the hunting industry and seeing all these
Mhm.
different animals and full body mounts and shoulder mounts, and I was just intrigued by it all. And I remember I was there one time, and the owner of the taxidermist, his name was Mel, and Mel had an uncle, and his uncle's name was Gary, and Gary was looking for some hunting guides, and the, Gary was an outfitter, and he became the first outfitter that I ever actually worked for as a hunting guide. But Mel told me, he said, Sean, my uncle Gary's looking for a hunting guide, and he said, I know you're into hunting deer now, and I know that you were also into horses. And the thing that was unique about it was Gary's hunting outfit. It was for whitetail deer, and it was a
Mhm.
horseback hunt. So they did everything with horses. So he needed more than just a hunting guide. He needed somebody that was handy with horses as well. So, you know, shortly after that conversation, I got my hunting guide license, and before I
Mhm.
knew it, I was a hunting guide. And I mean, I had only been hunting deer, a few years, but I was
Yeah.
handy with the horses, and then away we went. And I started being a whitetail hunting guide, and oh my goodness, I had so much fun and so many great experiences doing that. And then again,
Mhm.
it just kind of snowballed from there to guiding for for deer, guiding for moose, eventually guiding bears, and yeah. So horses and me, we are, eh, it's kind of been a cool journey, and I'm really excited about
Yeah.
today and the future, and having these new horses and training them up again. And so
Oh,
it's pretty. Life is good.
yeah, too fun. And to that you're, you always had your eye on that place that you're at now, dreaming of that place, and now you
Right,
live there.
right,
Like
right.
that doesn't happen every day, so that's very special.
Yeah, yeah. Truly, truly blessed.
Mhm. That's amazing. So how did you transition from pastor to outfitter? Like, are you doing both at the same
Well,
time?
yeah, absolutely. I was doing both at the
Okay.
same time. When I was pastoring here at in Santa Clara, um, again, because I lived right here, I had opportunities to kind of work, and we were in a pretty small church, so there was
Mhm.
some freedom during the week, and fortunately we were able to work that out with the church, and I just did a lot of guiding um, while I was pastoring, and and that's seasonal work, right? So it's like 2 or 3 weeks here or 2 or 3 weeks there, and
Okay.
um, but again, pastoring is kind of my calling in life, and the hunting and the guiding and eventually the outfitting was kind of a secondary thing. And it's cool because I worked for a lot of different outfitters for different big game, probably for about um, 20 years or so. And it took me a few different places. I've never been out west of BC or Alberta guiding, but I've guided Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and I've met a lot of incredible people,
I
whether it's
bet.
the outfitters or the different guys that you know clients that we've taken over the years, primarily majority of them being Americans. Made so many
Mm.
great friends. Yeah, some incredible relationships that have developed over the years. I learned a whole lot. Um,
Mhm.
how different outfitters, how they did it. I, of course, being an employee, a guide working for them, oftentimes I kind of had to do it their way, whether I agreed
Yeah.
with it or not or whatever. I mean, not that there was a whole lot, but you know what? We all have our different ways of doing things, and
Mhm.
so yeah, eventually it came to a place where I had mentioned to you that we had moved um, to Niagara in 2009. And when we first moved back to Niagara, of course, I wasn't pastoring at the time, but so I had a year or two where I was doing a lot of guiding actually, and just kind of traveling to different spots, and eventually started pastoring in Niagara again. Um, but it was on one experience that I had, and this was in about 2015. So this about 9 years ago, and again, I had been
Hmm.
guiding every season for various um, big game, and in 2015, I had a pretty crazy encounter. Um, I was in northwestern Ontario, and I was guiding for black bear, and I remember I was in Ontario and in Manitoba. I'm not. I think British Columbia is different. I don't think you can bait for black bears there.
No, not here.
Yeah, so here we can. Of course, our provincial governments allow for that. And I remember walking down this trail one day. I had just left the truck, and I had like two 5-gallon pails of this bear bait, and I was walking down this trail towards this bait, and I can say as sure as I'm sitting in front of this computer screen here that
Yeah.
I heard from God. I had this. I literally I was minding my own business, and it was like God interrupted my day. And anytime God interrupts your day, I mean, I've learned in my life at least to listen. And
Right.
again, I'm walking down the trail, and I heard the Spirit of God speak to me, and he said to me, he said, "Why don't you do this for yourself now?" And I remember my jaw almost hitting the ground, because like over the course of my life, I just, I mean, I have to say, Dana, uh, years ago as a teenager, I had an encounter with God that really changed my life, and
Hmm.
that's why I gave my life to Him, and kind of committed my life to ministry, and so I've learned as a teenager that when we read the Bible, that we need to take God at His word for what He says. And
Hmm.
I've discovered that when I read the Bible, that God had all these different encounters with different human beings, different people, just different names, but the same as I am. And
Right.
God had conversations, and God spoke to people in the Bible. So I really don't think that should be any different in 2025, you know. But
Yeah.
this was 2015, and God said to me, I've heard Him speak to me in many different times in my life. And I'm walking down this trail, and He goes, "Why don't you do this for yourself now?" And I remember
Mm.
my response to Him was, "Yeah, why don't I? You know, why am I always working for somebody else?" And you know what? It just began. And when I was at this particular um, outfitter's place, I was way up in northwestern Ontario. I was all by myself. The hunters hadn't even come yet, and I was in the middle of the bush all by myself. And I've been baiting bears for like 2 weeks before the hunters come, 3 weeks before the hunters come, and I'm all alone. And God asked me this question, and then I began to pursue it in my mind and my understanding, and it just took over my thoughts. And I was like, you know what? How am I going to make this work? And but I was like, yeah, why
Hmm.
don't I? And it was funny because my whole life I've been very content to work for other outfitters, because it wasn't really my main source of income, but it was just something
Hmm.
that I love to do. I mean, I love the people. I love meeting people. I love working with people, helping them harvest animals that they've never. And just being there and being a help. It's always been a joy to me. And I never ever really considered doing it for myself until that day when He said, "Why don't you do this for yourself?" And you know what? I mean, everything just fell into place. It was amazing, except for this
Wow.
thing called COVID. In 20,
Right.
in 2020 was my first official year as a black bear outfitter. We started Hawthorne Outfitting, and my very first season, the borders were closed. I was like, how can this be? But that is what it is. And we've
That's where the faith comes in. You're like, did
absolutely,
I really hear that right? Is this
absolutely
supposed to be? Did I mess up somewhere? Because it doesn't look like it's going to line up properly, but
right, right.
that's often how God works.
Yeah,
That's where that faith is needed.
yeah.
Keep going.
So cool. So yeah, I mean, again, I started pretty small with Hawthorne Outfitting, just because I was living in Niagara, and in my early, well, I was when I started the ball rolling was 2015, and just because it takes time with government and all this sort of thing, and getting tags, licenses, things of that nature, it took some time. Um,
Hmm.
and but everything did fall into place. Took about 4 or 5 years, and I wasn't. My wife and I had dreamed probably of someday coming back home to the Duck Mountain to retire. But
Hmm.
like I said, leading my horse this morning, if somebody would have told me a year ago I would be here right now, I would have fell out of my tree, fell off my chair, however you want to say it. But God works in mysterious ways, and here we are today. And I'm not pastoring right now, but I love to preach and teach out of the Bible, and I have opportunities here and there. But right
Hmm.
now, it's looking like our sole source of income is through outfitting, which we're very pleased about. We're very excited about, and thankful
Yeah.
that I'm in better hands than my own.
Right. And like I said before we started recording, when I think of Manitoba, I didn't think about bears being like a big animal out there, but I guess the population is pretty substantial, and you grow some big bears out in Manitoba.
Yeah, you know what? I've been guiding for bears for, oh my goodness, pretty early as well. I mean, I started with deer and then got into bears pretty quick. So I haven't done the math, but it's been like at least 20, 25 years that I've been chasing
Mm.
bears around. And again, in a lot of different places. And I've heard, of course, you're sitting around a campfire at night after you're hunting bears or whatever with a group of guys and start telling stories and this, that, and the other. And it's amazing because I had no idea that the Duck Mountain, or basically Manitoba in general, was the incredible jewel that it was when it in terms of black bear hunting. Because a lot of guys that are kind of, I guess if you want to use the term, trophy hunters, or they end up getting pointed in the direction of Manitoba. Um,
Hmm.
and the Duck Mountain, um, and I can't just, truthfully, I can't just say for the Duck Mountain, but also to the north of us, there's another mountain. It's called the Porcupine Mountain. And then to the south of
Hmm.
us, there's Riding Mountain National Park. And any one of these three parks, the bear hunting here is really out of this world. I mean, the
Hmm.
population is through the roof. It really is. Because we can bait, as I mentioned before, we just chatted about briefly before. Like I've had some hunters sitting in a bear bait where they could count 12 bears that they could see with, you know, at
Wow.
one time. 12 bears at one time. That's the most we've ever seen. And of course, there's stories where guys come out and they say, "Oh, I must have saw 25 bears or 30 bears today," and they think maybe it was 25 different bears or whatever, and who's to know because bears are coming in and out. But basically, they sat
Hmm.
there for 6 hours that day, and they basically had a bear in front of them for almost every minute that they sat there for 6 hours. So
Wow.
the population's just through the roof. And then, the other thing that's great about Manitoba is we've got incredible color phase bears here.
Mm.
Not
Hmm.
just the black colored black bears, but we got,
Yeah.
cinnamons and some blondes and of course chocolate brown and all sorts of things. And then I think a big part of it too is why the bear hunting is so good here is, we're right on the edge of agriculture, and, bears have a lot of different oat fields that they can
Yeah.
make a mess of in the fall by, eating farmers' oats and rolling around in them and they do a lot of destruction to farmers' crops, unfortunately. But
Yeah, okay.
the agriculture is great, and it helps the bears get big, and they got the big
Right.
woods to hide in as well, so they just kind of got the best of both worlds.
Wow. So that's your primary species that you're going after with your outfitter
Yeah,
is
yes,
bears.
I'm
Yeah.
licensed only for black bear, actually, right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then like how's business been going with since COVID and through COVID and now we're on the other side of it and now there's
Oh, it's
all kinds of stuff happening in the political realm about hunting and
yeah. I mean,
everything in that
I
way.
think the future remains to be seen, but you know what? So many. I mean, our primary clientele as outfitters in Canada is Americans. Um,
Mhm.
our American friends to the south are just absolutely, nuts about hunting. They've got an incredible history with hunting, and I totally get that. But you know what? A lot of those people, like you and me, are just so good, down to earth people. I
Mm.
recently went to um, a trade show in Toronto, and I was actually this was in March. Yeah, it was just last month.
Yeah, it was recently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I actually traveled. I drove there, and I drove through the United States, and I was in Wisconsin, and I stopped. My son was with me. My son and I stopped for breakfast, and we're in the restaurant, and I noticed uh, I had to be a fellow hunter. He had a camouflage jacket on, right? So he was sitting by himself, and I just struck up a conversation with him, and I just, we just started.
As you do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we started talking about hunting, and he was going to be hunting
Mhm.
turkeys in the spring, and then ended up telling him, "Oh, we're black bear outfitters. Oh, I've always wanted to go up to Canada and get a black bear." And he asked for one of our cards, whatever. We gave him a card, but over the course of our conversation, he did say, he just said, "Well," he said, "I hope you Canadians, you guys up there, I hope that you don't hold this against us, all of this, tariff stuff."
Right. Yeah.
And I basically, I just kind of said, it is what it is, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But I thought it was so cool. Like, here's a guy I didn't even, just had a conversation with, but just salt of the earth kind of a guy, and that was his attitude, right? So
Mhm.
I don't, yeah, I don't know, and it's certainly not my hope that the hunting industry will be hurt by any of this. I really don't think
Mm.
it will. So
I love your optimism. That's good. And that's how it goes, right? Like we are it's bad over here in Vancouver, I should say. Just people have their backs up about all kinds of stuff politically, especially over in America. Got lots of opinions, but
mm,
really when you sit down with individuals and you have a conversation, you can see our shared humanity and that we really just want to live our lives and um feed our families, love our people, and nobody wants to do anything too crazy, but for having those conversations and getting to know people one on one um, is where we find our commonalities and the things that we enjoy and can really find those things that we love to do together.
absolutely.
So that's really neat that you had that connection with that guy. Hopefully he'll give you a call and come up and get some bears.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Have you like what's your biggest bear to date that you guys have got up there
Oh, you
in
know
your
what?
outfit?
Actually, last spring we got our biggest bear. As far as the skull goes,
Mm.
it seems like we do a lot of our hunting in the spring. Um, although, just going back to our beginnings in 2020, we didn't hunt in 2020 because the borders were closed, of course. In the
Mhm.
fall of 21, the borders were opened, and actually we had hunters that were chomping at the bit to get up here, and they did everything they needed to do to get here. So in the fall of 2021 was actually our officially first hunt, and we shot
Okay.
two bears in the fall over 500 pounds. Um, and their skulls weren't they didn't meet the Boone and Crockett measurement. They certainly were Pope and Young. The one
Mm.
hunter harvested the 505-pound chocolate bear with his bow. So he definitely reached Pope and Young. And then the other fella shot his 510-pound black bear with a rifle. And that skull was 20 and 13 sixteenths, if I'm not mistaken. And it needs
Okay.
to score 21 inches to be in the record books for Boone and Crockett. So it was just shot. But back to your question, last
Mhm.
spring we got our biggest skull bear, and that bear actually, he, I say only, but it's a spring bear. He weighed 428 pounds, which is a
Mhm.
pretty big, spring bear for weight wise. But his
Mhm.
skull size was 21 inches and 21 and a quarter inches, 4/16. So it was our first one, our first Boone and Crockett bear that we've got in the last 4 or 5 years of hunting. So it was a pretty exciting day. It was awesome.
Yeah,
It was pretty cool.
that's good. Do you ever get like I have a lot of black bears around here, and I'm not really scared of them, but they're wild animals. You know, I came pretty close to a couple of them last year. They just come around my backyard, or I'll be hiking in the woods just across the street, really, because I live right on the edge of civilization here in North Van.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, do you ever get scared around with all those bears, or if you do they get aggressive sometimes, or are they just so excited to be around those bait piles they don't even really notice you?
Well, yeah, sometimes, especially those young bears early in the spring when we're baiting and they're pretty hungry, especially the young
Mhm.
ones, oftentimes, we've been, I, we've been so close to them, you could reach out and touch them, because
Wow.
so, but not that I would advise anyone to do that, but occasionally
Right.
we get brave and we do some silly things, just trying and just be, but it's almost, and not like I'm a bear whisperer or anything, but you can kind of see in their eyes, and of course, when it
Okay.
comes to black bears, you do have to be very careful around a sow with cubs.
Yes.
Like any bear species, and the black bear,
Mhm.
that's probably where they're the most dangerous.
Right.
But yeah, occasionally we have a few hair raising adventures, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun. Um, one thing I wanted to touch on too that we also have in common is our Métis heritage. And for myself, it's a really complicated story, but
uh,
it's in there for me. But I don't know my history. Don't have a great relationship with my papa, my grandpa.
oh.
Um, but what does that mean for you as a hunter, as an outfitter? Um, does that come into play for you, your heritage and history of yeah, the people that you're related to down the line?
Yeah, well, it certainly explains a lot of things to me. Um,
Mm.
it explains, like when I shot my first buck, as I shared that story with you. Like, wow, what was lurking in the weeds in me? I didn't know it was there
Right.
until I began to explore it, and then it just made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you know what? You're Métis, so
Mm-hmm.
you've got that hunter gatherer. It's in you,
Yeah.
of course, being a Métis doesn't mean that everyone is a hunter, but
Yeah.
uh, for me, it applies. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then also just, the we talked about my grandfather being playing the fiddle, and just like all that's just, the fiddle music and jigging and all sorts of things like that is so a part of our ancestry too. I mean, it just all makes sense to me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's so cool because um, as I began to explore hunting and guiding and being in the woods, and again, even just having the horses and some of the adventures that I went on in the Duck Mountain, like just riding the horse and being outdoors and just having an opportunity to live a life like this. um it's just made me understand and know who I am, who God created me
Mm-hmm.
to be. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the blood that flows in me. And
Mhm.
these things are just very, very natural to me, even though, again, I wasn't immersed in it as a young person growing up or as a teenager. But as an adult and beginning to explore, it just made so much sense that this is who I am, and this is
Yeah.
my lineage is people like this,
Right.
who trapped and hunted. And I've never been a trapper, but I tell you one, that's something else. If I had and I'm not that old yet, who knows?
No, you got time.
But yeah,
Lord
that's
willing.
something I'm so intrigued by and would love to do as well too. So it's just, yeah, it's I know who I am. I know who I
Mhm.
am, who God has created me to be as a Métis, and I know who I am in Christ. Who God has made me to
Mhm.
be, and I'm just, uh, I guess I can't get around ever being thankful enough in my life for God and who He's created me to be, and I'm just very content being who I am and being
Yeah.
Métis and being a child of God, and it's the best life ever. Um, I'm very grateful. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's such a great way to be. A lot of people out there are just, the whole victimhood mentality, um, seeing the glass half empty, that kind of thing, and just living in the past or unforgiveness, things like that, of all the things that have happened. We've all had stuff happen to us, but it can really tell for you is just, yeah, your life is abundant and overflowing with God's goodness and blessing, and the joy comes through in our conversation here. So it's been really great hearing your story. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the conversation before we wrap up here?
Well, yeah, I guess just to kind of dovetail to what we just said, I I've had some of the best moments in my life sitting in a tree stand or in a hunting
Mm-hmm.
blind or just walking down a trail or what, just sitting by a campfire in the Duck Mountain. And you know, we're so busy in life. Life is very busy. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a scripture in Psalm 46:10 that says, "Be still and know that I am God." And I think being a hunting guide, being an outfitter, has provided me many opportunities to sit in God's creation. I love nature. I love His animals that He's given us. Um, I love Him,
Mm-hmm.
and as much as I love nature's God, and just to have opportunities to be still and get away from the traffic, from the noise, and sit in a tree stand. Um, it's amazing. I kind of grew up around country music, and I was actually listening to a song this morning, Dana. It's funny. It's called where I think it's called "Where I Find God" by a fella named Larry Fleet. I don't know if you've ever listened to the song,
Mm,
but it's a cool
I think
cool
so.
song. And
Yeah.
he says you can find God in places you never expected to find him. Whether it's sitting on a bar stool or around your Evinrude motor, or sitting in a deer stand or a hayfield. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
or driving down the interstate. Whether you're looking
Yeah.
for him or not, that's where I find God, and that's
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the story of my life. I can't separate God from my life because He's been nothing but good to me, and He's blessed me with so many opportunities. And there's something about being still and coming to awareness of Him and who He is and how much He loves us and all that He's
Mm,
done for us. And I know this world is a crazy place, and there's a lot of crazy things going on in politics and the news and just in general. But
right.
I assure you, and I assure anyone that's listening and watching, that God has us in His hands, and
Mm-hmm.
He's just the best thing that's ever happened to my life, and He's been an incredible part of my story, and I'm so grateful for the paths that He's led me down, and for the people like you that being in a part of this industry hunting community brings
Mm-hmm.
together. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's. I guess I'll leave
He
you with
writes the
that.
best stories. Oh, good. That's very good. Um, yeah, we could go on and on talking about all kinds of things, and there's so much to say about life and thankfulness and just the beauty that we get to enjoy. Like I like turning that to that perspective on things when the opposite. Many choose the opposite, right?
Yeah.
But we truly do have so much to be thankful for, and in Canada we have abundant wildlife. We have just beautiful provinces and the creation that we get to enjoy every day because we go outside. And I've been like yearning for that because I've been doing a lot of city things lately, and like, oh, I cannot wait
Right.
until I get to get out. And that's really new for me because I didn't grow up that way. I've just always been in the city, but now that I've had a number of times to get out, where all you hear is the noise of the silence,
Mhm.
and it is noisy. Um, that's just what I've been craving more and more. So, um, yeah, super happy for you guys and your new adventure with your new home and your new horses and um, this next season coming up. When does opening season start for you guys over there?
Well, you know what? We're actually doing a spring bear hunt and a fall bear hunt this year. And of course, me being here allows for that. And it was just the way it kind of
Mm-hmm.
worked. So we're kind of split. So we're starting around the middle of May into June. Um, I'm truthfully, I don't even know. The season might open April 15th or April 1st. I don't know. But again, we've got so much snow here. There's nobody's even going to be thinking about hunting bears here in April.
No.
But yeah, usually we don't get going till May. So yeah, it's
Okay.
exciting. I can't wait. I mean, well, not that I'm indoors all winter long because I get outdoors as much as
Mm-hmm.
I can. I don't let the cold stop me too much. If you dress accordingly, you can have a lot of fun outside during the winter. But
Yeah,
it's something
absolutely.
special when spring comes. It's just a beautiful time of year. It's incredible. So it's
Yeah.
can't wait for it. Be looking forward to get
Awesome.
out and about.
I'm sure you'll have a successful season. And thanks for coming to chat with me today.
You bet, Dana. Thank you very much for having me. It's been my pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
All right.